Hi everyone, my name's Kat and in this video we're going to show you how to plant a fruit tree. Today we're going to plant a Fuyu persimmon tree, and in the nursery I've selected this tree for the shape that we want it to grow into, which in this case is a central leader, which is a shape a little bit like a Christmas tree. If you're planting a fruit tree and you'd like it to turn into a vase shape or turn into a flat espalier against a wall, then you want to look for branches that are pointing in the right directions and in the right places for the final shape that you want to create. Now, most deciduous trees like this persimmon here that loses its leaves in the winter are best planted in the winter when they're more dormant. But if you've got evergreen plants that are a little bit more subtropical, like citrus or avocados, then it's usually best to wait till spring when the cold weather has passed. Grass is very competitive with fruit trees, so if you do have a heavily rhizomatous grass like a couch or kikuyu, it's usually best to deal with those before you plant your fruit trees by clearing them a metre away from the trunk. So we're ready to dig our hole now, and I'd like you to have a look at where the fruit tree is sitting. What we want is to keep the tree at the same level in the ground as it is in the pot, and you can see here that it's still a little bit too high, so we're going to dig this hole slightly deeper. We're also going to widen it so that it's at least twice the width of the pot at the moment. So the hole is the right size now, but I'm just using a garden fork to loosen the soil at the bottom so the roots have an easier time getting deep into the soil. So we're doing a quick check now to see whether the pot is at the right level with the rest of the ground, and that's looking pretty good. So what we're going to do is actually bare root this tree now so that we can spread the roots out around the hole. So to do that, we just give it a little bit of a squeeze and then I've got a bucket of water here and we're just going to gently take the pot off and actually plunge it into the water. Now, a lot of trees in winter will actually come bare rooted, so you can skip this step. And the reason why we're doing this is we don't want the roots to be wrapped around in a tight circle because they've been growing in the pot. We actually want to spread them out so they reach out into the soil in different directions. Okay, so with the tree bare rooted, what we're looking for now is these major roots, the largest ones. And if there were any that were wrapping around and around and around because the tree has been in the pot for too long, then at this stage I'd just be gently trying to untangle them so that we can spread them out in radial directions. It's so much better to buy a small fruit tree because you won't end up with these giant roots that are already stuck in a tight position. So this small fruit tree is the perfect size. It can choose where to put its own roots and put them where it wants to put them in the soil rather than being constrained by that pot. So at this stage, what I'm doing is just mounding the soil in the bottom of the hole because what I'd like is for the tree roots to go level or slightly down. So I'm just creating a mound for the tree to sit on, and then we'll spread those roots out as best as we can. Keep checking to see whether the soil is positioned so that the tree will be at the same level. If you need to backfill a bit more, in this case I need to backfill slightly just to make sure it's at the right level. Alright, so we're about to plant this tree, and at this stage you're positioning the tree, and in some trees you might want to decide which is going to be the front side, and you might want to decide where these branches are pointing if you want to create a shape like an espalier, a flat tree against a fence, or an open vase shape. So now's the time to position your tree and decide which angle you want to plant it on. What I'm doing now is actually just spreading these roots out and making sure that they're able to go out in different directions. We don't want them curled around, all wrapped together, because they will stay in the same position once we plant them and just get thicker and thicker and sometimes suffocate the tree. So that's looking pretty good. I've got the roots spread out around the hole, and now it's time to backfill. As I'm backfilling, there's just a few roots that come out quite high, so I'm holding them up, otherwise they might get squashed down and potentially break off. Now when you're planting, just make sure that the tree is still pointing straight up. If you need to make adjustments, now's your last chance. And be particularly careful that you don't bury the graft union Lots of fruit trees are grafted, which means we've got a rootstock and then what's called a scion, and we don't want to bury this graft union. Now you'll notice that I didn't add anything to the soil in the bottom of the hole, but we are going to add some compost on the surface and also some mulch. As you're adding the compost, just make sure that you don't get any actually touching the trunk of the tree. We want to keep this nice and clear and dry so that we don't get any collar rots. We're also going to add a layer of woody mulch to the surface. Now if you want to, you can actually create your own mulch using chop and drop. So if you've got some prunings like I do here, all we need to do is chop these up into 10 or 15 centimetre pieces and leave them on the surface. And these are actually the ideal mulch for fruit trees, and they'll slowly break down into nutrients to feed the tree. And over time, as your tree grows, it will actually start to produce its own pruning, so it will effectively become self-mulching. And you can also, of course, leave the leaves on the ground, and they will also break down into beautiful, rich soil. The reason we've cut them up into these small pieces is just so they lay flat in contact with the ground, and that means they'll stay moist and that will help them break down. We're nearly done here, but there is another important step that we need to take, and this one is really difficult when you've just purchased a tree from the nursery. We're actually going to give it a prune, and that's because it probably has lost some of its roots in the planting process. We want to make sure that the roots are balanced with the canopy and the tree doesn't have to work too hard to support leaves at this stage. So we're actually going to cut back just above one of these nodes or little buds, cutting back these main branches to balance the roots and the top. And I'm also going to cut back that last one there. Of course, it's a great idea to label your fruit trees, and what I've done here is made a label out of a piece of aluminium can. I've written on it with a biro, so it's made a permanent imprint that can never fade. The last step is to give your fruit tree a really good deep drink of water, not just to keep it watered, but also to settle that soil in around the root system and make sure there are no air gaps. So thanks very much for watching, and for more great sustainable gardening tips, head to www.mysmartgarden.org.au.